The billionaire took her virginity, but cried when she whispered, "You were my only dream." Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. Some choices define us, even when the world doesn't understand them. The fluorescent lights of St. Vincent's University Hospital buzzed overhead as Mirella Dawson checked her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. 11:47 p.m. Her second shift was just beginning, but her body felt like it had been running on fumes for weeks. She tucked a loose curl behind her ear and straightened her scrubs, the same pale blue ones she'd been wearing since her morning classes ended 6 hours ago. "Mirella, we've got a VIP admission coming in," called Nurse Supervisor Janet from behind the reception desk. "Room 314, confidential patient. No questions, no gossip." Mirella nodded, used to the hospital's occasional high-profile cases. Politicians, local celebrities, sometimes even criminals under police protection. She'd learned not to care about who they were. In her eyes, everyone became the same when they needed healing. She grabbed the admission paperwork and made her way to the third floor, her worn sneakers squeaking softly against the linoleum. Room 314 was at the end of the hall, away from the busier sections. Through the partially open door, she could see a man lying in bed, his back turned toward the window. "Good evening," she said softly, knocking twice before entering. "I'm Mirella, your night nurse. How are we feeling?" The man turned slowly, and their eyes met for the first time. Mirella had seen handsome men before. She worked in a hospital where young doctors strutted around like peacocks. But this was different. His features were sharp yet somehow gentle, with grey eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories, dark hair, slightly tousled, and a jawline that spoke of both strength and exhaustion. "I'm fine," he said, his voice deeper than she'd expected. "Just a minor car accident. They're keeping me overnight for observation." She noticed how he avoided her gaze, almost as if he was used to people staring. "Well, let's make sure you're as comfortable as possible. I'm going to check your vitals and see if you need anything for pain." As she approached with the blood pressure cuff, he watched her movements with curious intensity. Most people either flirted shamelessly or treated her like she was invisible. He did neither. "You don't recognize me, do you?" he asked quietly. Mirella paused, studying his face more carefully. "Should I? Are you someone famous?" For the first time since she'd entered the room, he smiled. Not the practiced smile of someone used to cameras, but something genuine and almost relieved. "No," he said. "I'm just Kellen." "Well, just Kellen," she said, wrapping the cuff around his arm. "I'm just Mirella, and right now, that's all that matters." As she pumped the cuff, she felt him watching her. Not in the way men usually did, not with hunger or calculation, but with something that felt almost like wonder. "You have gentle hands," he said softly. Mirella felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you. I try to remember that everyone's scared when they're here, even if they don't show it." "And what about you? Are you scared?" The question caught her off guard. She looked up from the blood pressure monitor, meeting his grey eyes directly. "Sometimes, but not of taking care of people. That's the easy part. What's the hard part?" She hesitated, unsure why she felt compelled to answer honestly. "Believing that someone will take care of me the same way someday." The words hung in the air between them, more intimate than she'd intended. Kellen studied her face with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Your blood pressure's perfect," she said quickly, removing the cuff and stepping back to create professional distance. "Thank you." He settled back against his pillows, but his eyes never left her face. "Mirella?" "Yes? What time do you get off work?" She blinked, surprised by the question. 7 a.m., but I have classes at 9, so I'll probably grab coffee and head straight to campus." "Classes?" "Nursing school. I'm finishing my degree." She tucked her hair behind her ear again, a nervous habit. "This job helps pay for it." Kellen nodded slowly, as if filing away every detail. 2 jobs and school. That's impressive." "That's survival," she corrected with a small laugh. "But I don't mind. Everything I'm working for will be worth it." "What are you working for?" The question was simple, but something in his tone made it feel profound. Mirella found herself looking into those grey eyes again, searching for the right words. "A life that matters," she said finally. "One where I can help people and maybe find someone who sees the real me." The monitor beside his bed beeped steadily in the silence that followed. Somewhere down the hall, she could hear the distant chatter of other nurses, the soft ding of elevator doors. I should let you rest, she said, backing toward the door. Press the call button if you need anything. Mirella, she turned back, hand on the doorframe. Thank you for seeing me as just Kellen. Something in his voice made her chest tighten. She nodded and stepped into the hallway, pulling the door partially closed behind her. As she walked back to the nurse's station, Mirella couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted in her carefully ordered world. She'd spent 23 years building walls around her heart, waiting for someone worth letting in. But as she settled at her desk to update his chart, one thought echoed in her mind with startling clarity. What if he was exactly what she'd been waiting for? Have you ever felt that instant connection with someone you just met? That feeling like your soul recognized them before your mind did? Mirella felt something shift the moment she looked into Kellen's eyes. But what happens when you discover the person who makes your heart race is hiding a secret that could change everything? Would you trust that feeling, or would you run? Tell us in the comments. Do you believe in love at first sight, or do you think real love takes time to build? And more importantly, what would you do if you met someone who felt like destiny, but you sensed they were keeping something huge from you? The most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. Mirella couldn't focus on her textbook. The words about cardiovascular nursing blurred together as her mind drifted back to room 314. She sat in the corner booth of Mel's Diner, the same 24-hour spot where she grabbed coffee between her hospital shift and morning classes. The vinyl seat was cracked. The coffee was lukewarm, but it was quiet enough to study, or it should have been. You're distracted, observed Beverly, the night shift waitress who'd become something of a mother figure to Mirella over the past 2 years. The older woman refilled her cup without being asked. Let me guess. Some doctor finally caught your attention? It's not like that, Mirella said quickly, then wondered why she felt the need to defend herself. There was just this patient last night. Something about him was different. Beverly raised an eyebrow. Honey, in 30 years of watching people, I've learned that different usually means trouble or treasure. Which one you think he is? Before Mirella could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from her study partner, Carmen. Girl, you missed Professor Martinez's pop quiz announcement. It's tomorrow on chapters 12-15. Damn, Mirella muttered, gathering her books. She'd been so distracted that she'd completely zoned out during yesterday's lecture. Back at St. Vincent's that evening, Mirella found herself walking a little faster toward the 3rd floor. She told herself it was just professionalism. Checking on a patient was part of her job. But her heart was beating faster as she approached room 314. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear voices inside. She paused, not wanting to interrupt. Sir, the media is asking questions about your whereabouts, came a man's voice, crisp and efficient. Your absence from the quarterly board meeting has raised concerns about your health. Tell them I'm dealing with a personal matter, came Kellen's familiar voice, but there was an edge to it now that hadn't been there the night before. And Marcus, make sure my location stays confidential. I don't want any photographers near this hospital. Mirella felt her stomach drop. Media, board meetings, photographers. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. Just how famous was this man? She took a deep breath and knocked, giving them a moment to finish their conversation. Come in, Kellen called. She entered to find Kellen alone, looking out the window. He'd changed from the hospital gown into his own clothes, an expensive-looking black t-shirt and jeans that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Good evening, she said, keeping her voice professionally neutral. How are we feeling today? Better, he said, turning to face her. Much better now that you're here. The comment sent warmth through her chest, but she pushed it aside. I need to check your incision site and take your vitals. Doctor's orders. As she moved closer with her supplies, she caught a subtle scent. Not cologne, but something clean and expensive. Everything about him whispered money, from his perfect teeth to the way he carried himself. How had she missed it before? You're quiet tonight, he observed, as she checked his temperature. Just focused on my work. That's not it. His grey eyes searched her face. You heard my phone call, didn't you? Mirella's hands stilled. She looked up at him, surprised by his directness. I wasn't eavesdropping. It's okay, he said softly. I wondered when you'd figure it out. She stepped back, crossing her arms. Figure what out? That you're some kind of celebrity? That you've been lying to me? I never lied. I told you my name was Kellen. I told you I was in a car accident. Everything I said was true, but not complete. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. No, not complete. So who are you, really? Kellen ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. My full name is Kellen Reese. I own a logistics company. Mirella waited, sensing there was more. A very large logistics company, he added quietly. The name hit her like a cold wave. Reese Logistics. She'd seen it on trucks, on news reports about billion-dollar mergers, on the business magazines scattered around the hospital waiting room. Kellen Reese wasn't just rich. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country. Oh, she breathed, taking another step back. Mirella. No, I get it now. She shook her head, feeling foolish. This is probably funny to you, right? The poor nursing student who didn't recognize the famous billionaire? It's not like that. He stood up from the bed, moving toward her. What we talked about last night, that was real. You treated me like a person, not like a bank account or a business opportunity. Do you have any idea how rare that is? So, what happens now? She asked, her voice smaller than she intended. You go back to your mansion and your board meetings, and I go back to serving coffee and changing bedpans. That's up to you. The simple statement hung between them. Mirella felt her walls going up, the same protective instincts that had kept her heart safe for 23 years. I should finish your assessment, she said, moving back toward her supplies. Mirella, his voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. Reluctantly, she met his gaze. The man you talked to last night, the one who asked about your dreams, who thanked you for seeing him as just Kellen. That's who I really am. The rest is just circumstances. She wanted to believe him. Something in his eyes, the same vulnerability she'd glimpsed the night before, made her want to trust him. But the rational part of her mind was screaming warnings. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I want to see you again, outside of this hospital. Her breath caught. Mr. Reese. Kellen, he corrected. Just Kellen, remember? Kellen, she said softly. We're from completely different worlds. You know that, right? I know that you're the first person in years who's made me want to be in any world at all. The honesty in his voice almost undid her. Almost. I need to think about this, she said, finishing her vitals check with practiced efficiency. Of course, take all the time you need. He handed her a business card. Simple, elegant, with just his name and a phone number. When you're ready to talk, call me. Mirella took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. The contact sent electricity up her arm. I should go, she said, backing toward the door. Mirella, she paused, hand on the doorframe. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I've never felt more like myself than I did during our conversation last night. As she walked down the hallway, Mirella clutched the business card in her pocket. Her mind was spinning with questions, doubts, and something that felt dangerously like hope. She'd spent her whole life believing that when the right person came along, she'd know. But she'd never considered that the right person might come wrapped in complications she wasn't sure she could handle. Back in room 314, Kellen stood at the window, watching her car pull out of the parking lot below. For the first time in 15 years of building his empire, he found himself praying that money and power wouldn't be the things that drove away the one person who mattered. But as Mirella drove home through the quiet streets, she had no idea that her decision would change both their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind refuses to accept. 3 days had passed since Kellen's revelation, and Mirella hadn't called. She'd stared at his business card so many times that the elegant lettering was burned into her memory, but she couldn't bring herself to dial the number. You're overthinking again, Carmen said, sliding into the seat across from her in the university library. Her study partner was the opposite of Mirella in every way, bold, outspoken, and never afraid to speak her mind. It's written all over your face. I'm studying, Mirella replied, gesturing to her open textbook on pharmacology. Girl, you've been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. Carmen leaned closer, lowering her voice. This is about that mystery patient, isn't it? The one you won't tell me about. Mirella sighed, closing her book. It's complicated. The best ones always are. What's his deal? Married? Criminal? Secret baby mama? Mirella struggled to find the words. He's successful, very successful, and I think he's genuinely interested in me. Carmen frowned. And that's a problem because people like him don't end up with people like me. Not really. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Carmen grabbed Mirella's hands across the table. Honey, you are brilliant, beautiful, and kind. You work 2 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. You volunteer at the children's ward on your days off. Any man would be lucky to have you. Before Mirella could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the hospital's main number. Mirella, it's Janet. Her supervisor's voice sounded strained. I know it's your day off, but we're short-staffed and we have a situation. The patient in 314 is asking for you specifically. He's agitated. Morella's heart skipped. What kind of situation? He's refusing treatment from other nurses. Says he'll only allow you to handle his care. The doctors want him to stay another night for observation, but he's threatening to discharge himself against medical advice. Carmen raised an eyebrow, clearly listening to every word. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Morella said, already gathering her books. Thank you, room 314, same as before. As Morella hurried across campus toward her car, Carmen kept pace beside her. Room 314 guy is your mystery man, isn't he? Carmen said. And he asked for you specifically? It's not what you think, it's exactly what I think. Someone's got it bad for our girl Morella. 20 minutes later, Morella stood outside room 314, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. Through the door she could hear raised voices. Sir, you need to remain calm, came a male nurse's voice. Your blood pressure is elevated. I told you, I'm fine. I want to go home. Mr. Reese, please. She knocked and entered to find Kellen sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, while two nurses and a doctor tried to reason with him. His eyes found hers immediately, and she saw relief wash over his face. Mirella, I'll take it from here, she said quietly to the other staff members. They exchanged glances but stepped back, clearly grateful to pass the difficult patient to someone else. Once they were alone, Mirella crossed her arms and studied him. Really? You're throwing a tantrum because I didn't call? Kellen had the grace to look embarrassed. It wasn't a tantrum, I needed to see you, so you decided to be difficult with my colleagues and make my supervisor call me on my day off. I'm sorry, that was selfish of me. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of his uncertainty. I've been lying here for 3 days, wondering if I scared you away. You didn't scare me away. She moved closer, automatically checking the monitors beside his bed. But you did make me realize how different our lives are. Different doesn't mean incompatible, doesn't it? She met his gaze directly. Kellen, I looked you up. Your company is worth billions. You've been on magazine covers. You date supermodels and actresses. Dated, he corrected, past tense, and those relationships were... He paused, searching for the right words. They were convenient, expected. None of them were real. And what makes you think this would be real? The question hung between them. Kellen stood up slowly, moving closer until they were just a few feet apart. Because when I'm with you, I forget about everything else, he said quietly. The company, the pressure, the constant noise of that world, it all disappears. You make me remember who I used to be before I became what everyone expected me to be. Morella felt her resolve wavering. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you barely know. You're right, it is. He took another step closer. But I'd like the chance to know you better, to let you know me better. The real me, not the version that appears in Forbes magazine. How would that even work? You live in penthouses and fly private jets. I take the bus to work and eat ramen for dinner half the week, so we figure it out together. His voice was earnest, almost pleading. Mirella, I've spent 15 years building something that's supposed to make me happy, but I've never felt more empty than I did these past 3 days without seeing you. She studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. All she saw was vulnerability. One coffee, she said finally. That's it. Somewhere normal where we can talk without... She gestured around the hospital room. The smile that spread across his face was radiant. One coffee. But I picked the place. Deal. And you drive yourself. No drivers, no bodyguards, no entourage. He nodded. When? Mirella checked her watch. I get off work tomorrow at 7 a.m. There's a place called The Grind on 5th Street. It's nothing fancy. Nothing fancy sounds perfect. She backed toward the door, suddenly feeling shy. I should go. Let the doctors check you over properly this time. Mirella? She paused, hand on the doorframe. Their usual position, she realized. Thank you for giving us a chance. As she walked down the hallway, Mirella couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump into something that could either destroy her or change her life forever. Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. So? How's Mystery Man? Mirella typed back, I'm meeting him for coffee tomorrow. The response came immediately. Finally! But girl, you better call me after and tell me everything. Back in room 314, Kellen was already making mental notes. He'd need to research coffee shops, learn what normal people talked about on first dates, figure out how to be just Kellen instead of Kellen Reese, billionaire CEO. But as he settled back onto the hospital bed, allowing the medical staff to complete their assessments, one thought echoed in his mind. For the first time in years, he was genuinely excited about tomorrow. What neither of them knew was that their coffee date would set in motion events that would test everything they thought they knew about love, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. The most beautiful moments happen when we stop trying to be perfect. Mirella stood in front of her tiny bathroom mirror, changing clothes for the third time. Her shift had ended 20 minutes ago, and she was supposed to meet Kellen at the grind in 10 minutes. She'd gone from her scrubs to jeans and a sweater, then to a dress that felt too formal, and now back to jeans with a different top. "You're being ridiculous," she told her reflection. "It's just coffee." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't just coffee. It was the moment that would determine whether the connection she'd felt with him was real or just her imagination. The grind was exactly what she'd hoped. A small, independently owned coffee shop with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and the comfortable buzz of neighborhood regulars. Mirella arrived first and chose a corner table where they could talk privately. She was stirring sugar into her latte when she saw him walk through the door. Kellen had clearly made an effort to dress down. Dark jeans, a simple grey Henley, and sneakers that looked like they'd actually been worn before. But even in casual clothes, there was something about the way he carried himself that set him apart. Confidence without arrogance, power held in check. He spotted her immediately and made his way over, pausing to order at the counter first. She watched him interact with the young barista. Polite, patient, treating her with the same respect he'd show a business partner. It was a small thing, but it told Mirella something important about his character. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat across from her with a simple black coffee. "I got lost trying to find parking." "You got lost?" "I usually have someone else handle the driving," he admitted with a sheepish smile. "I had to use GPS to get here." The honesty made her relax slightly. "Welcome to how the other half lives. I'm starting to think I've been missing out." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each testing their coffee and stealing glances at each other. The morning light streaming through the window highlighted the grey in his eyes, and Mirella found herself thinking that he looked younger somehow, less burdened than he had in the hospital. "Tell me about your family," he said finally. The question caught her off guard. Most men wanted to talk about themselves, their jobs, their accomplishments. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? Do you have siblings?" Mirella wrapped her hands around her mug, using the warmth to ground herself. "I grew up in Detroit. Just me and my mum after my dad left when I was 8. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning office buildings at night and working at a grocery store during the day to keep us afloat. That must have been hard." "It was. But my mum, she was extraordinary. She used to tell me that our circumstances didn't define our worth. That education was the one thing nobody could take away from me." Mirella's voice softened. "She died my senior year of high school. Cancer." Kellen reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was gentle, comforting without being presumptuous. "I'm sorry. She would have liked knowing I'm about to become a nurse. She always said I had healing hands." Mirella looked down at their joined hands. "What about you? What was your family like?" Kellen's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. "Different. My father built the company from nothing. He was brilliant but ruthless. He died when I was 25 and left me everything. My mother remarried and moved to Italy. We talk occasionally, but," he shrugged, "she preferred her new life without the complications of the business world. That must have been lonely. I threw myself into work. Figured if I could build something bigger, better, more successful than what my father left me, it would prove I was worthy of it." He met her eyes. "I've spent 15 years proving myself to a dead man." The vulnerability in his admission made Mirella's chest tighten. "And what do you want to prove now?" "That I'm worthy of this," he said quietly, gesturing between them. "Of you." The words hung in the air, honest and raw. Mirella felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "Kellen, I know what you're thinking," he interrupted gently. "That this is crazy, that we barely know each other, that our lives are too different for this to work. And maybe you're right, but I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. How do you feel about me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "Like I've been holding my breath for years and just remembered how to breathe. Like every decision I've made, every path I've taken, was leading me to that hospital room where you'd be waiting." Mirella's heart was racing. She'd imagined this conversation 100 times since meeting him, but the reality was more intense than anything she'd prepared for. "I scare myself sometimes," she admitted quietly. "With how much I want things I'm not sure I can have." "What do you want?" The question was simple, but loaded with meaning. Mirella looked around the coffee shop, at the young couple sharing a muffin at the next table, the elderly man reading his newspaper by the window, the barista humming as she cleaned the espresso machine. Normal people living normal lives. "I want someone who sees me," she said finally. "Not what I do for a living or where I come from or what I can give them. Just me. I want to matter to someone the way my mother mattered to my father before he got scared and left. What if I told you that you already matter to me? I'd say that's impossible. You don't even know me. I know that you work 2 jobs and maintain perfect grades because you promised your dying mother you'd become a nurse. I know that you volunteer at the children's ward because you understand what it's like to be afraid and alone. I know that you see people, really see them, in a way that most people have forgotten how to do." Mirella stared at him, surprised by how much he'd observed, how much he'd understood from their brief interactions. "I know that you've never been with anyone because you're waiting for something real," he continued. "And I know that you're scared right now because what you're feeling for me is real, and that's terrifying when you've spent your whole life protecting your heart." The accuracy of his words took her breath away. "How do you—" "Because I'm scared too," he said simply. "I've built my entire life around control, around knowing exactly what to expect from every situation. And you make me want to throw all of that away and just trust that this feeling is worth the risk." They sat in silence again, the weight of their honesty settling between them. Around them, the coffee shop continued its morning rhythm, but Mirella felt like they were in their own private bubble. "So what do we do now?" she asked. "We take it one day at a time, one coffee at a time, until we figure out if this is something worth fighting for." Mirella looked into his grey eyes and saw her own hope reflected back at her. For the first time in her life, she was ready to take a leap of faith. "Okay," she said softly. "One day at a time." Kellen's smile was radiant. "Are you free for dinner tomorrow night?" "I work until 11. "Then breakfast the next morning?" "I have class." "I'm very patient," he said, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "And very persistent." Mirella laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "Friday night, 7 o'clock, but somewhere normal, no 5-star restaurants or private clubs. I know just the place." As they prepared to leave, Kellen insisted on walking her to her car. The morning air was crisp, and Mirella pulled her jacket tighter around herself. "Thank you," he said, as they reached her beat-up Honda Civic, "for giving me a chance." "Thank you for being worth it," she replied. He leaned down and kissed her cheek softly, his lips lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. The simple contact sent warmth through her entire body. "I'll call you," he promised. As Mirella drove toward campus for her afternoon classes, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibility instead of just responsibility. But as she pulled into the university parking lot, she had no idea that across town, Kellen was already planning something that would change everything, something that would test whether their newfound trust could survive the weight of his world. Some moments are so perfect, you wish you could live in them forever. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Mirella found herself checking her phone constantly, waiting for Kellen's calls and texts that had become the highlight of her days. Their conversations ranged from deep philosophical discussions about life and purpose to silly debates about whether cereal counted as soup. "You're glowing," Carmen observed as they walked out of their advanced pharmacology exam. "Like, literally glowing. This mystery man is good for you. It's just nice to have someone to talk to," Mirella said, but she couldn't hide her smile. "Girl, when you start wearing lip gloss to study group, it's more than nice to talk to. You're falling for him." Before Mirella could deny it, her phone rang. Kellen's name lit up the screen and her heart did that little flutter that happened every time. "Hey," she answered, stepping away from Carmen. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." His voice was warm through the speaker. "Just finished an exam, what's up?" "I wanted to confirm our plans for tonight, and I need your address so I can pick you up." Mirella hesitated. Her apartment was in a run-down complex on the wrong side of town, peeling paint, broken elevator, and neighbors who played music too loud. The thought of Kellen seeing where she lived made her stomach clench with embarrassment. "Actually, why don't I meet you at the restaurant?" she suggested. "Mirella," his voice was gentle but firm, "I'm picking you up. That's what people do on dates." "This isn't really my neighborhood's demographic," she said quietly. "I don't care about your neighborhood. I care about you." The simple statement made her chest tighten. After a moment, she gave him her address. "I'll see you at 7, he said. "And Mirella, wear something comfortable. We're going to have fun." At exactly 7 o'clock, Morella heard a knock on her door. She'd spent an hour getting ready, finally settling on dark jeans, a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes, and ankle boots. Simple, but she felt good. She opened the door to find Kellen holding a single sunflower, not roses or some expensive arrangement, but a bright, cheerful sunflower that made her smile immediately. "You said you liked normal," he said, offering her the flower. "Sunflowers are about as normal as it gets." "It's perfect," she said, genuinely touched by the thoughtful gesture. As they walked toward the parking garage, Morella braced herself for the luxury car she expected to see. Instead, Kellen led her to a modest blue sedan. "You rented a Toyota Camry?" she asked, amused. "I bought it," he said, opening the passenger door for her. "Figured I needed a normal car if I was going to date a normal girl." "You bought an entire car for our date?" "I bought a car because I realized I wanted to be able to drive myself places. The fact that it makes you more comfortable is just a bonus." As they drove through the city, Kellen kept the conversation light and easy. He asked about her exam, told her funny stories about learning to navigate traffic without a driver, and played music he'd researched because he thought she might like it. "Where are we going?" she asked, as they pulled into a parking lot next to what looked like a carnival. "The county fair," he said, grinning at her surprised expression. "You said normal. I Googled normal date ideas, and this was number 3 on the list." Morella laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "For you Googled date ideas, I Googled a lot of things. Did you know that most people split appetizers, and that bringing flowers on a first date is considered sweet, but bringing expensive gifts is considered pushy? You've never been on a normal date before, have you?" "I've been on dates," he said, getting out of the car and coming around to open her door, but never one that mattered. The fair was everything Morella had loved as a child, but hadn't experienced in years. Bright lights, the smell of funnel cake and popcorn, the distant sound of carousel music. Kellen bought tickets and looked around with the expression of someone seeing magic for the first time. "What do you want to do first?" he asked. "Everything," she said impulsively, then felt self-conscious. "I mean, whatever you want. Everything it is." They started with the ring toss, where Kellen proved surprisingly competitive despite his complete lack of skill. After missing every shot, he studied the game with the same intensity he probably brought to business deals. "It's rigged," he declared, making Morella laugh. "It's supposed to be hard. That's what makes it fun." "Fun," he repeated, as if testing the word. I'd forgotten what that felt like. They moved through the fair like teenagers, sharing cotton candy, screaming on the tilt-a-whirl, attempting to win stuffed animals at impossible games. Kellen's competitive nature emerged fully when he discovered the strength test, and he was determined to ring the bell. "You don't have to prove anything," Morella said, watching him roll up his sleeves. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to win you that giant teddy bear." It took him 4 tries, but when the bell finally rang, his triumphant grin was worth every dollar he'd spent. He presented her with an enormous brown teddy bear with a ridiculous bow tie. "I can't carry this around all night," she protested, laughing. "Then we'll have to take him on all the rides with us." As the evening progressed, Morella watched Kellen transform. The careful control he usually maintained slipped away, replaced by genuine laughter and childlike wonder. When they got stuck at the top of the Ferris wheel, he didn't check his phone or seem impatient. He just looked out at the city lights spread below them. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "It is," she agreed, but she wasn't looking at the lights. She was looking at him, his profile lit by the carnival glow, his grey eyes soft with contentment. "Morella?" He turned to meet her gaze. "Yeah? Thank you for this, for showing me what I've been missing. You were the one who planned this date, but you're the one who made me want to try." He reached over and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I spent so many years building walls around myself, I forgot what it felt like to let someone in. And how does it feel?" "Terrifying," he said honestly. "And perfect." The Ferris wheel began moving again, but neither of them looked away from each other. When they reached the bottom, Kellen helped her out of the seat, his hand lingering on hers. "One more ride?" he asked. "The carousel," she said impulsively. "I always wanted to ride the carousel." They climbed onto painted horses side by side, and as the music played and the world spun around them, Morella felt like she was living in a dream. Kellen reached over and squeezed her hand as their horses rose and fell in perfect rhythm. "I have a confession," he said over the music. "What?" "I've never been happier than I am right now." The honesty in his voice made her heart skip. "Kellen, I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other, but being with you feels like coming home." As the carousel slowed to a stop, Mirella realized she was falling. Not just attracted to him, not just curious about him, but genuinely, deeply falling in love with this man who bought a Toyota Camry and Googled date ideas because he wanted to make her happy. They walked back to the car in comfortable silence, the giant teddy bear tucked under Kellen's arm. When they reached her apartment building, he walked her to the door. "I had the best time," she said, turning to face him under the flickering porch light. "So did I." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his grey eyes. "Mirella? Yes? I'd like to kiss you, if that's okay." Instead of answering, she rose up on her toes and met him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper as she melted into him. His hands came up to cup her face, gentle and reverent, as if she were something precious. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Wow," she whispered. "Yeah," he agreed, resting his forehead against hers. "Wow." "I should go inside," she said, but made no move to leave. "You should," he agreed, but didn't step away. They stood there for another moment, reluctant to end the perfect evening. "I'll call you tomorrow," he promised. "I'd like that." As Mirella watched him drive away, she hugged the ridiculous teddy bear to her chest and allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she'd been fighting. She was completely, irrevocably in love with Kellen Reese. What she didn't know was that upstairs in her apartment, a message was waiting on her answering machine, one that would shatter the perfect bubble they'd created and force them both to confront the reality of their different worlds. And a message that would test whether their newfound love could survive the harsh light of truth. Sometimes reality has a way of crashing into our dreams when we least expect it. Mirella floated into her apartment, still feeling the warmth of Kellen's kiss on her lips. She set the giant teddy bear on her small couch and headed toward the kitchen to put the sunflower in water. The red light on her answering machine blinked insistently. 3 messages waiting. She pressed play while filling a makeshift vase from an old mason jar. "Mirella, it's Carmen. Girl, you better call me and tell me everything about tonight." She smiled, already planning to call her best friend in the morning. "Miss Dawson, this is Dr. Sterling's office calling to confirm your interview for the pediatric nurse internship next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Please call to confirm." Her heart leapt. The internship at Children's Memorial Hospital was her dream job, working with kids while finishing her degree. She'd forgotten the interview was scheduled. The 3rd message made her blood run cold. "Mirella Dawson, this is Veronica Walsh from City Style magazine. I understand you've been spending time with Kellen Reese. I'd love to chat with you about your relationship. There's compensation involved, of course. Call me at..." She stared at the machine in shock. How did a magazine reporter even know about them? They'd been so careful, so private. Her hands shook as she deleted the message, but the damage was already done. Their perfect bubble had burst. Her phone rang, making her jump. Kellen's name appeared on the screen. "Hey," she answered, trying to keep her voice normal. "I just wanted to make sure you got inside safely," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "And to tell you again, what an amazing night I had." "Kellen," she interrupted, "we need to talk." "What's wrong? You sound upset." "A reporter called me from some magazine. She knows about us." The silence that followed was deafening. "Kellen? I'm here. I'm just thinking." His voice had changed, becoming more guarded. What did she say exactly? Mirella repeated the message, and she heard him curse softly under his breath. "This is my fault," he said. "I should have been more careful. I should have warned you this might happen." "What does this mean?" "It means our private little world just became very public. Mirella, you need to know, when people find out I'm dating someone, especially someone who isn't part of this world, it becomes a story. They'll dig into your life, your past, your family." Mirella sank onto her couch, the reality of his words hitting her like a physical blow. "They'll what?" "They'll want to know everything about you, where you work, where you go to school, who your friends are. They'll paint you as either a gold digger trying to trap me or a saint who's saving my soul. Either way, they'll make you into a character in their story instead of letting you be yourself. But we've only been on 2 dates. That doesn't matter to them. The fact that I'm dating anyone is news. The fact that you're..." He paused. "That I'm what? Different from the women I usually date. They'll either tear you down or put you on a pedestal, but either way, your privacy is gone." Mirella felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I can't handle that, Kellen. I can't have reporters calling me, digging into my mom's death, talking to my professors or co-workers. I have an internship interview next week that could change my entire future. I know, I'm so sorry, I never wanted this to happen, But you knew it could happen. Another silence, this one loaded with admission. Yes, he said quietly. I knew it could happen. And you didn't tell me. I hoped. I thought maybe we could have more time before they noticed. I wanted to protect what we had for as long as possible. Morella closed her eyes, feeling the fairy tale crumbling around her. You should have told me. You're right. I was selfish. I was so desperate to feel normal, to have something real, that I convinced myself the outside world didn't matter. But it does matter, doesn't it? Your world, your life. It matters because it's who you are. No, he said fiercely. Who I am is the man who bought a Toyota Camry and spent 3 hours at a county fair because it made you smile. Who I am is the person I become when I'm with you. But you can't separate those things, Kellen. You can't just turn off being a billionaire when it's convenient. What are you saying? Morella took a shaky breath. I'm saying maybe we're fooling ourselves. Maybe this was just a beautiful dream, but it's time to wake up. Don't do this. His voice was raw with panic. Don't let them win before we've even had a chance to fight. I'm not equipped to fight this battle. I'm a nursing student who works 2 jobs and eats ramen for dinner. I can't handle photographers following me to class or reporters calling my professors. Then I'll handle it. I'll hire security. I'll have my lawyers send cease and desist letters. And that just proves my point. Morella stood up, pacing her small living room. Your solution to everything is money and power. But I don't want to live in a world where I need security guards to go to the grocery store. So what do you want me to do? Give up everything I've built? I don't know. The words came out as a cry. I don't know what I want you to do because I don't know how to make this work. They were both quiet for a long moment, the weight of their impossible situation settling between them. Maybe, Kellen said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe you're right. Maybe I was selfish to think I could have both, my life and you. Kellen, no, you're right. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life, someone who won't bring chaos and media scrutiny into your world, someone who can take you on dates without worrying about paparazzi. Tears were streaming down Morella's face now. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? His voice was getting stronger, more controlled. You're scared, and you have every right to be. I shouldn't have put you in this position. I'm not scared of them, she said, surprising herself with the truth. I'm scared of losing myself. I've worked so hard to build this life, to honor my mother's memory, to become someone she'd be proud of. And I'm terrified that if I step into your world, I'll disappear. You could never disappear. You're too strong, too real. You don't understand. You've always had power, always had money. You don't know what it's like to feel small and insignificant. I felt small and insignificant every day until I met you. The honesty in his voice broke her heart all over again. This is killing me, she whispered. I know. Me too. I need time to think. How much time? I don't know. Maybe we should take a break. Let this media attention die down. See if we can figure out how to make this work without destroying each other. The silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. If that's what you need, he said finally. Kellen, I love you. The words came out rushed, desperate. I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably too late, but I love you, Morella. You've changed everything about how I see the world, how I see myself. Her heart shattered completely. I love you too. That's what makes this so hard. Then fight for us, please. I don't know how. Neither do I, he admitted, but I'm willing to learn if you are. Morella looked around her tiny apartment, at the sunflower on her kitchen counter, the ridiculous teddy bear on her couch, the life she'd built from nothing. Then she thought about the fairy tale evening they'd shared, the way he looked at her like she was a miracle, the future she'd glimpsed in his eyes. I need time, she repeated. Okay, he said quietly. I'll wait. After they hung up, Morella sat in her dark apartment and cried, for the perfect evening that had ended too soon, for the love that felt too big and too dangerous, and for the impossible choice between the life she'd built and the dreams she was just beginning to imagine. Outside her window, the city continued its restless rhythm, unaware that 2 people who had found something rare and beautiful were learning that sometimes love isn't enough to bridge the gap between different worlds. But as Morella would soon discover, some battles are worth fighting, even when you don't know how to win. The strongest love is tested not by perfect moments, but by impossible choices. A week passed in agonizing silence. Morella threw herself into her studies and worked with desperate intensity, trying to drown out the ache in her chest. She'd ignored 17 calls from reporters, changed her route to campus to avoid photographers, and even considered skipping her internship interview when she saw a van with camera equipment parked outside Children's Memorial Hospital. But she went anyway. This was her future, the one she'd worked toward since her mother's death. Miss Dawson, Dr. Patricia Henley, the head of pediatric nursing, smiled warmly as Mirella entered her office. Please have a seat. The interview went better than she'd dared hope. Dr. Henley was impressed with her grades, her experience, and her obvious passion for pediatric care. Everything was perfect until the final question. I have to ask, Dr. Henley said, her tone carefully neutral. There have been some media reports linking you romantically to Kellen Reese. Will this relationship impact your ability to maintain professionalism and focus here at the hospital? Mirella's heart sank. Even here, in the space she'd worked so hard to reach, Kellen's world was intruding. Dr. Henley, I can assure you that my personal life will never interfere with my professional responsibilities. Patient care will always be my priority. I'm glad to hear that. The board has some concerns about media attention potentially disrupting our environment, but your qualifications speak for themselves. As Mirella left the hospital, she felt hollowed out. Even if she got the internship, it would always be tainted by questions about her relationship with Kellen. She was becoming exactly what she'd feared, defined by someone else's life instead of her own accomplishments. Her phone rang as she reached her car. Carmen. Thank God you finally answered, her friend said breathlessly. Girl, you cannot keep hiding from me. I've been worried sick. I'm fine. No, you're not. You look like hell. You haven't been eating, and you've been avoiding everyone. What happened with Mystery Man? Mirella leaned against her car, suddenly exhausted. It's complicated. Everything's complicated until you talk about it. Coffee? Now? The usual place. An hour later, Mirella sat across from Carmen at their favorite diner, picking at a sandwich she didn't want, while her friend waited with unusual patience. His name is Kellen Reese, Mirella said finally. Carmen nearly choked on her coffee. As in Reese Logistics, the billionaire Kellen Reese? You know who he is? Honey, everyone knows who he is. He's on the cover of Fortune magazine like every other month. Carmen stared at her. You've been dating one of the richest men in America, and you didn't think to mention this tiny detail? It wasn't supposed to matter. How was it not supposed to matter? Mirella told her everything. The hospital, their dates, the perfect evening at the fair, the reporter's call, their heartbreaking conversation. Carmen listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to understanding to fierce protectiveness. So let me get this straight, Carmen said when Mirella finished. You found a man who makes you happier than you've ever been, who bought a Toyota Camry just to make you comfortable, who told you he loves you, and you're running away because some reporters are being nosy. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You're scared. Of course I'm scared. Carmen, today they asked me about him in my internship interview. My career is being defined by who I'm dating before it's even started. And what did you tell them? That my personal life wouldn't interfere with my work. Good, because it won't. Carmen leaned forward. Mirella, you've spent your whole life fighting for what you want. You worked 3 jobs in high school to pay for your mom's medicine. You're putting yourself through nursing school. You volunteer with sick kids in your spare time. You are not the kind of person who runs away from a fight. This isn't my fight. Like hell it isn't. You love him, don't you? Mirella's eyes filled with tears. More than I knew was possible. Then fight for him. Fight for what you have together. How? I don't know how to navigate his world. So learn. You figured out how to navigate everything else. Before Mirella could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check the news. I'm sorry. K. Carmen grabbed her phone and pulled up a news website. The headline made Mirella's blood run cold. Reese Logistics CEO spotted with mystery woman. Who is Mirella Dawson? Below was a photo of them at the fair, holding hands by the Ferris wheel. Her face was clearly visible, and the caption identified her as a struggling nursing student and hospital worker. Oh God, Mirella whispered. Carmen kept scrolling. The article detailed her mother's death, her financial struggles, even her grades and work schedule. They'd interviewed her high school guidance counselor, her current professors, and somehow gotten quotes from co-workers at both of her jobs. How did they find out all of this? Mirella asked, feeling violated and exposed. This is what they do, Carmen said grimly. But look at this part. She pointed to a quote from Dr. Martinez, her favorite professor. Mirella Dawson is one of the most dedicated and compassionate students I've ever taught. She's going to make an extraordinary nurse. And another from Beverly at the diner. That girl works harder than anyone I know. She's got more integrity in her little finger than most people have in their whole body. They're not painting you as a gold digger, Carmen observed. They're painting you as a Cinderella story. I don't want to be anyone's story. Too late for that, but you get to decide how the story ends. Morella's phone rang. Kellen. She stared at the screen, paralyzed. Answer it, Carmen said firmly. Morella? His voice was raw with emotion. I'm so sorry, I tried to stop it, but... I saw the article. Are you okay? No, she said honestly. I'm not okay. They interviewed my professors, Kellen. They know everything about my mom, my finances, my grades. I know, I'm handling it. My lawyers are sending cease and desist letters to everyone involved. It's too late for that. It's already out there. What can I do? Tell me how to fix this. Morella looked at Carmen, who was watching her with fierce encouragement. I don't know if you can. Morella, please, don't let them destroy what we have. Maybe what we have was always going to be destroyed. Maybe we were just fooling ourselves that two people from such different worlds could make this work. That's not true. What we have is real. It's the most real thing in my life. But at what cost? My privacy is gone. My professors are being harassed. The hospital where I want to work is questioning whether I'm a liability. Then I'll step back. I'll make a public statement that we're just friends, that there's nothing romantic between us. The offer should have relieved her, but instead it felt like another knife to the heart. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. God, no. What I want is to hold you and tell you that we're going to figure this out together. What I want is to show up at your apartment right now and remind you why none of this other stuff matters. But you can't, can you? Because showing up at my apartment would just give them more photos, more stories. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of their impossible situation. I have a proposal, he said finally. What? Give me one more chance. One evening, away from the city, away from the cameras and reporters. Just you and me talking honestly about whether this is worth fighting for. Kellen, if after that conversation you still think we can't make this work, I'll let you go. I'll make sure the media attention dies down, and I'll stay out of your life. But please, give us one more chance to figure out if love is enough. Morella closed her eyes, feeling Carmen's hand squeeze hers across the table. Where? She asked. I have a cabin about 2 hours north of the city. It's private, isolated. No one will bother us there. When? Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. In the Toyota Camry. She could hear the smile in his voice. In the Toyota Camry. After they hung up, Carmen grinned at her. Now that's my girl. You're going to fight for your man. I'm going to listen to what he has to say, Morella corrected. That's all. Sure, Carmen said with a knowing look. And I'm going to become a professional ballerina. As Morella drove home, she tried to quiet the voice in her head that whispered this was a mistake. But a louder voice, one that sounded suspiciously like her mother, was saying something different. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Tomorrow night would determine whether their love story was ending or just beginning. Some conversations change everything, not because of what's said, but because of what's finally understood. The drive to the cabin was quiet, filled with the kind of tension that comes from two people who have too much to say and don't know where to start. Morella watched the city fade into rolling hills and dense forest, each mile taking them further from the chaos of their complicated reality. Kellen's cabin wasn't what she'd expected. Instead of the massive luxury retreat she'd imagined, it was a modest 2-bedroom structure, nestled among tall pines, with a stone fireplace and a wraparound porch that overlooked a small lake. Simple, peaceful, and completely private. It was my grandfather's, Kellen explained as they pulled into the gravel driveway. He built it himself in the 1960s. It's the only place I've ever felt completely myself. Inside, the cabin was rustic but comfortable, handmade furniture, quilts that had clearly been loved for decades, and walls lined with books and old photographs. Kellen moved around the space with an ease she'd never seen in him before, lighting the fireplace and opening windows to let in the cool evening air. Are you hungry? He asked. I brought dinner. You cooked. I ordered from that Italian place you mentioned liking, the one near campus. He gestured toward the kitchen counter, where several containers waited. I figured we should eat before we talk. They sat at the small wooden table by the window, sharing pasta and talking carefully around the real issues. Kellen told her about summers spent here as a child, learning to fish with his grandfather and helping build the dock that stretched into the lake. Morella found herself relaxing despite everything, drawn into stories of a simpler time when his biggest concern was whether the fish were biting. He was the only person who ever saw me as just a kid, Kellen said, refilling her wineglass. Not the heir to anything, not someone with responsibilities and expectations, just a boy who liked to skip stones and catch fireflies. Is that why you brought me here? To be just a boy again? I brought you here because this is where I come to remember who I really am, and I wanted you to see that person. After dinner, they moved to the porch swing, wrapped in an old quilt as the sun set over the lake. The silence between them was comfortable now, but heavy with unspoken words. Mirella, Kellen said finally, I need to tell you some things. About my life, about what being with me really means. And then you need to decide if you can handle it. She nodded, steeling herself for whatever was coming. The media attention will never completely go away, he said. Even if we're careful, even if we try to stay private, there will always be interest in who I'm dating, who I marry, what kind of life we build together. That's the reality of who I am. I know. But there are ways to manage it. We can control how much access they have, how much of our life we share publicly. We can create boundaries. What kind of boundaries? We keep our relationship private for now. No public appearances together, no social media posts, no interviews. We build something real between us first, away from all the noise. And when we're ready, if we're ready, we control how and when we go public. Mirella considered this. And if I don't want to go public, ever, then we don't. We find ways to have a life together that doesn't require media attention. Is that even possible? I don't know, he admitted honestly, but I'm willing to try if you are. They swung gently in the evening breeze, watching fireflies dance over the water. There's something else, Kellen said quietly. About my expectations, about what I want from this relationship. Mirella tensed, waiting. I don't want to change you, he continued. I don't want to turn you into someone who fits into my world. I fell in love with who you are. The woman who works 2 jobs and studies until 2 a.m., who brings sunflowers to patients and remembers everyone's coffee order. I want to find ways to fit into your world, not the other way around. But your world is so much bigger than mine. Size doesn't matter. What matters is meaning. He turned to face her. My world is full of people who want things from me. Money, connections, status. Your world is full of people who need things from you. Care, healing, hope. Guess which one feels more important? Mirella felt tears threatening. Kellen, I've been thinking about this all week, he interrupted gently, about what really matters to me, and I realize that everything I've built, everything I've accomplished, means nothing if I don't have someone to share it with, someone real. But I can't be your whole world. That's too much pressure. I'm not asking you to be my whole world. I'm asking you to be my home base, the place I come back to when everything else gets crazy, the person who reminds me who I am underneath all the rest of it. And what do you offer me in return? The question was blunt, but necessary. Kellen thought for a long moment before answering. Security, he said finally. Not just financial, though that's part of it. Security to pursue your dreams without worrying about student loans or working 2 jobs. Security to take risks, to fail, to try again. And, he paused, seeming to gather courage, and someone who will love you exactly as you are, for as long as you'll let me. Mirella's heart was racing. That's a lot to promise. I know, but I mean every word. They sat in silence again, the weight of his words settling between them. In the distance, a loon called across the water, its haunting cry echoing off the trees. I'm scared, Mirella admitted finally. Of what? Of losing myself. Of becoming someone I don't recognize. She looked at him directly. Of falling so completely in love with you that I forget how to be me. What if I promise to remind you? How? By loving all the parts of you that made me fall in love in the first place. By supporting your career, your dreams, your independence. By never asking you to be anything other than exactly who you are. And what if the media attention becomes too much? What if I can't handle it? Then we figure out a different way. We move somewhere quieter. We change how we live. We do whatever it takes to protect what we have. Mirella studied his face in the dim porch light, looking for any sign that he was making promises he couldn't keep. All she saw was sincerity and desperate hope. There's something I need to tell you, she said quietly. Anything. I've never been with anyone. Physically. The words came out in a rush, and she felt heat flood her cheeks. I know that probably seems strange at my age, but I was always waiting for what? For someone who felt like forever. Kellen went very still. And do I feel like forever? That's what scares me most, she whispered. Because yes, you do. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Mirella, that's not something you need to be scared about. That's something beautiful, something precious. And if you choose to trust me with that gift, I promise I'll treasure it, even knowing that I have no idea what I'm doing, especially knowing that, because it means whatever we build together will be ours alone. The intensity in his voice made her heart skip. She looked out at the lake, at the reflection of stars on the dark water, and felt something shift inside her. A decision crystallizing, courage gathering. Kellen? Yes? I don't want to wait anymore. He turned to face her fully, searching her eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you, and I'm tired of being afraid. And if we're going to figure out how to make this work, we need to start trusting each other completely. Are you sure? Instead of answering with words, she leaned forward and kissed him. This kiss was different from their first, deeper, more urgent, full of promise and possibility. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Stay with me tonight, she whispered against his lips. Not because of the media or the complications or any of that, but because I want to, because I choose you. Kellen cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize had fallen. Are you absolutely certain? Because once we cross this line, everything changes. I'm certain, she said firmly. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He kissed her again, soft and reverent, as if she were something precious and fragile. Then let's go inside, he said quietly, and let me show you how much I love you. As they stood and walked toward the cabin door, hand in hand, Mirella felt like she was stepping across a threshold into a new life. One where love was worth the risk, where trust was stronger than fear, and where two people from different worlds could create something entirely their own. Tonight, under a canopy of stars and away from the noise of the world, they would write the most important chapter of their love story. In the quiet moments between heartbeats, souls recognize their home. The cabin felt different as they stepped inside, charged with anticipation and tenderness. Kellen led her to the living room, where the fireplace cast dancing shadows on the walls. He didn't rush, didn't push. Instead, he simply held her hands and looked into her eyes. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for, he said softly. We can just hold each other, talk more, take our time. I know, Mirella replied, her voice steady, despite the flutter in her chest. But I don't want to wait anymore. I've been waiting my whole life for this feeling, for this person, for you. He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each palm gently. Then we'll go slow. We'll make it perfect. It already is perfect, she whispered, because it's with you. Kellen led her to the couch in front of the fireplace, sitting down and pulling her gently onto his lap. They kissed slowly, deeply, hands exploring with reverent touches. Every caress was a question, every response an answer. You're trembling, he murmured against her neck. I'm nervous, she admitted, but not scared. Not with you. Tell me what you need. Just be patient with me, and don't let me overthink this. He smiled against her skin. I can definitely handle both of those requests. They moved together in the firelight, time seeming to slow as they discovered each other. Kellen worshipped her with touches and whispers, making her feel cherished and beautiful. When she hesitated, he waited. When she was ready to continue, he followed her lead. Mirella, he breathed as they moved toward the bedroom. You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I love you, she said, the words coming from the deepest part of her heart. I love you so much it scares me. I love you too. More than I knew was possible. In the soft lamplight of the bedroom, they came together with a tenderness that brought tears to both their eyes. Kellen was patient, gentle, reverent, making their first time together everything Mirella had dreamed it could be. Afterward, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, hearts still racing, foreheads touching in the intimate silence. Are you okay? He asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. I'm perfect, she whispered, and meant it completely. That was beautiful, he finished. You were beautiful. She nestled closer to him, feeling safe and complete in a way she'd never experienced before. Is it always like that? No, he said honestly. It's never been like that for me before. What we just shared, that was something else entirely. They talked quietly in the darkness, sharing dreams and fears, making plans and promises. Kellen told her about his hopes for the future, not just business expansions and acquisitions, but simple things like lazy Sunday mornings and family dinners. Mirella shared her vision of the pediatric ward she wanted to run someday, the children she hoped to help heal. I want to meet your mother, she said suddenly. Kellen stiffened slightly. She's complicated, very European, very formal. She has strong opinions about who I should be with. What kind of opinions? The kind that involve family lineage and social standing, he admitted reluctantly. She's not going to understand what I see in you. Because I'm not rich? Because you're real. My mother has spent so many years in that artificial world that she's forgotten what authentic looks like. Mirella propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. But you want her approval anyway. I want her to see what I see when I look at you. But more than that, I want you to feel welcome in every part of my life. And I will. We'll figure it out together. As dawn approached, they made love again, this time with less nervousness and more confidence, Mirella discovering her own power and desire. Kellen showed her how beautiful passion could be when it was wrapped in love and trust. I have to ask you something, Mirella said, as they watched the sunrise through the bedroom window. Anything. That first night in the hospital, when you said you'd never felt more like yourself, did you mean that? Every word. Then promise me something. Promise that no matter how complicated things get with the media and your world and all of that, you'll always remember this feeling, this version of yourself. I promise, but only if you promise the same thing. Promise me that no matter how overwhelming my world becomes, you'll never lose sight of who you are, the woman who changed my life just by seeing me as human. I promise. They sealed their promises with kisses as soft as the morning light. Later, over coffee and the simple breakfast Kellen had packed, they talked about practical things, how to handle the media attention, when to tell their friends and families, how to navigate the challenges ahead. I want to be transparent with you about something, Kellen said as they sat on the dock, feet dangling in the lake water. There will be people who try to convince you that I'm not worth the trouble, people who will offer you money to walk away, or try to dig up dirt to use against you. I can handle that. I know you can, but I want you to know that if it ever becomes too much, if you ever need protection or support, you just have to ask. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. And I want you to know, Mirella said, taking his hand, that I'm not going anywhere. Not because of reporters or photographers or disapproving relatives. I'm in this, Kellen, completely. Even though it won't be easy, especially because it won't be easy. The best things in life never are. They spent the rest of the morning planning their return to reality. They would keep their relationship private for now, but they would be together. Kellen would help Mirella handle the media attention, and she would help him remember what it felt like to be human. As they packed up the cabin and prepared to drive back to the city, Mirella felt like a different person than the one who had arrived the night before. Not because of what they had done physically, but because of what they had chosen emotionally. They had chosen each other despite all the obstacles. Ready? Kellen asked, holding the car door open for her. Ready, she said, and climbed into the Toyota Camry that had become a symbol of everything she loved about this man. As they drove back toward their complicated reality, both knew that the real test of their love was just beginning, but they also knew that they would face it together, armed with the unshakable knowledge that what they had found was worth fighting for. The cabin disappeared in the rearview mirror, but the magic of what had happened there would stay with them forever. They had crossed a threshold from which there was no return, and neither of them wanted to go back anyway. But as they re-entered the city, neither could have predicted the curveball that was waiting for them, one that would test their newfound commitment in ways they never saw coming. The greatest love stories are written not in perfect moments, but in the courage to choose each other when everything else falls apart. 3 weeks had passed since their weekend at the cabin, and Mirella had never been happier. She'd gotten the internship at Children's Memorial Hospital, the media attention had died down to manageable levels, and she and Kellen had found a rhythm that worked. Quiet dinners at her apartment, study sessions where he read business reports while she tackled nursing textbooks, stolen moments that felt like their own private world. She was reviewing patient charts in the pediatric ward when Dr. Henley approached with an expression that made her stomach clench. Mirella, I need to see you in my office now. The walk down the hallway felt endless. Inside the office, Dr. Henley closed the door and gestured for Mirella to sit. I've just received some very disturbing information, Dr. Henley began without preamble. Information that calls into question your judgment and professionalism. I don't understand. Dr. Henley slid a manila envelope across the desk. These photos were delivered to the hospital board this morning, along with a letter suggesting that your relationship with Mr. Reese began while he was a patient under your care. Mirella's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside were photographs of her and Kellen at the fair, at the coffee shop entering her apartment building. But the damning photo was one she'd never seen before, taken through the hospital window, showing her holding Kellen's hand while he was still in his hospital bed. This appears to show an inappropriate relationship between a nurse and her patient, Dr. Henley continued, a serious breach of professional ethics. It wasn't like that, Morella said desperately. I didn't even know who he was when I first treated him, and we didn't start dating until after he was discharged. The photo suggests otherwise. The photo is misleading. I was checking his pulse and he was thanking me for my care. Nothing inappropriate happened while he was my patient. Dr. Henley studied her carefully. The board is concerned about the appearance of impropriety. They're questioning whether you can maintain appropriate professional boundaries. Dr. Henley, please, you know my work, my dedication to these children. I would never compromise patient care for personal reasons. I believe that, but the board has voted to suspend you pending a full investigation. The words hit Morella like a physical blow. Suspended? Effective immediately. You'll need to gather your personal belongings and leave the premises. But my patients, the children I'm working with, will be reassigned to other nurses. Morella felt her world crumbling around her. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed was being destroyed by someone who had taken a private moment and twisted it into something ugly. Who sent these photos? She asked. The envelope came with no return address. But Morella, Dr. Henley's voice softened slightly. This kind of targeted attack suggests someone with resources and motivation to damage your relationship with Mr. Reese. 20 minutes later, Morella sat in her car in the hospital parking garage crying so hard she could barely breathe. Her phone rang. Kellen, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. How could she tell him that loving him had cost her everything? By the time she made it home, her phone had 17 missed calls from Kellen and a dozen text messages ranging from concerned to frantic. She was sitting on her couch, staring at the photos that had destroyed her career, when he knocked on her door. Morella, open the door, please. I know you're in there. She considered ignoring him, but knew he wouldn't leave. When she opened the door, his face went white at her appearance. What happened? You look like my life just fell apart. She handed him the manila envelope. Someone sent these to the hospital board. I've been suspended. Kellen's face darkened as he studied the photos. Who did this? I don't know. Someone who wants us apart badly enough to destroy my career. This is my fault. All of it. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing her small living room like a caged animal. I should have protected you better. How could you have protected me from this? You can't control what people do with cameras. I can find out who did this. I can make them pay. And then what? You think that will give me my career back? My reputation? Kellen stopped pacing and looked at her. We'll fight this. We'll prove that nothing inappropriate happened. How? The photo looks exactly like what they're accusing me of. And even if we could prove my innocence, the damage is done. No hospital is going to hire a nurse who's been investigated for sleeping with patients. Then we'll find another way. I'll help you start your own practice, or... Stop. Morella held up her hand. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? Your solution to everything is money. But money can't fix this, Kellen. Money can't give me back my dream of working with sick children. Money can't restore my professional reputation. Then what do you want me to do? I want you to understand that this is what loving you costs. This is the price I pay for being with you. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. Are you saying you regret it? Regret us? Morella looked at him, at the man she loved more than her own life, and felt her heart breaking all over again. I'm saying that maybe we were naive to think we could make this work. Maybe the universe is trying to tell us something. Don't do this. Don't let whoever did this win. They've already won. I'm suspended, probably permanently. The children I was supposed to help will never know my care. The difference I was supposed to make in the world. Gone. Kellen moved toward her, but she stepped back. Morella, please. We can get through this together. Can we? Because it seems like every time I try to build something with you, your world tears it down. That's not fair, isn't it? The media attention, the invasive articles, now this attack on my career, all of it comes from being with you. And what about the love? What about what we found at the cabin? What about the promises we made? Tears streamed down her face. What good are promises when I can't be who I'm supposed to be? When I can't help the people I'm meant to help? You can still help people. There are other ways. In your world, with your money, dependent on your resources. She shook her head. That's not who I am, Kellen. That's not who I want to be. So what are you saying? I'm saying that maybe loving each other isn't enough. Maybe some people are just too different, from worlds too far apart, for it to work. Kellen stared at her for a long moment, his face a mask of pain and disbelief. You're giving up, he said quietly. On us, on everything we built. I'm being realistic, something you've never had to be. That's not true, and you know it. Do I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you live in a world where problems can be solved with lawyers and money and influence, but my problems are real, Kellen. My career is real, my reputation is real, and none of your resources can fix what's been broken. So that's it, we're done? Mirella closed her eyes, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. I think you should go. Mirella, please, just go. For a moment she thought he would fight harder, would refuse to leave, but then she heard his footsteps moving toward the door. This isn't over, he said from the doorway. I don't care who did this or why, I'm going to fix it. Some things can't be fixed, Kellen. I don't believe that, and deep down neither do you. After he left, Mirella collapsed onto her couch and sobbed. She cried for her destroyed career, for the children she wouldn't be able to help, for the love she'd just thrown away. But mostly, she cried because she was afraid that Kellen was right, that she was giving up on the most beautiful thing that had ever happened to her because she was too scared to fight for it. Outside her window, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware that two people who had found something miraculous were learning that sometimes love asks you to risk everything, and sometimes the price feels too high to pay. But in the darkness of her despair, Mirella had no idea that Kellen was about to do something that would change everything, something that would prove just how far he was willing to go to fight for their love. Sometimes the most beautiful endings are really just new beginnings in disguise. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the large windows of the newly opened Dawson Children's Wellness Center, illuminating the cheerful murals that decorated the walls. Mirella stood in the main playroom, watching as 8-year-old Tommy carefully arranged blocks while his mother sat nearby, finally able to smile after months of worry about her son's recovery. Dr. Dawson, a young nurse appeared at her elbow. Your 10 o'clock appointment is here. Thank you, Jessica. I'll be right there. Dr. Dawson. It still gave her chills to hear it. After everything that had happened, the suspension, the investigation, the months of uncertainty, she'd never imagined she'd be here now, running her own pediatric practice and working toward her doctorate in child psychology. Mirella? She turned to see Carmen walking through the center's front door, grinning widely and carrying a bouquet of sunflowers. You couldn't resist, could you? Mirella laughed, accepting the flowers. It's your 6-month anniversary. Of course I brought sunflowers. Carmen looked around the bustling center with pride. Look at this place. Look at what you built. Mirella followed her gaze, taking in the sight of children playing, parents smiling, her carefully selected staff providing the kind of holistic care she'd always dreamed of offering. The center wasn't just a medical facility, it was a place of healing and hope. I couldn't have done it without you, Mirella said softly, without everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Speaking of everyone, Carmen's tone became carefully casual. Have you heard from him? Mirella's smile faltered slightly. Carmen, I'm just asking. It's been 6 months and I know you miss him. Of course I miss him, but you know why we can't. Actually, I think there's something you should know. Carmen pulled out her phone and showed Mirella a news article. This came out yesterday. The headline read, Reese Logistics CEO donates $50 million to establish foundation for healthcare workers' legal defense. Mirella's hands shook as she read the article. Kellen had created a foundation specifically to help healthcare workers who faced legal challenges for standing up for their patients or maintaining their ethical standards. The article mentioned that the first recipient would be a nurse who had been wrongfully suspended for alleged professional misconduct. He's been fighting for you this whole time, Carmen said quietly. He hired the best investigators, found out who sent those photos, had them prosecuted. Did you know it was his ex-girlfriend's father, someone who thought destroying your career would drive you away? Mirella stared at the phone screen, tears blurring her vision. The hospital reinstated your license 2 months ago, Carmen continued. Full apology, cleared record, everything. He's been waiting for you to be ready to hear from him. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because you needed to rebuild yourself first. You needed to know that you could stand on your own, create something beautiful from the ashes. And you did. Carmen gestured around the center. This place exists because of your strength, your vision, your determination, not because of his money or influence. Before Mirella could respond, Jessica appeared again, looking flustered. Dr. Dawson, there's someone here to see you. He says it's important, but he doesn't have an appointment. Who is it? He said his name was Kellen. He's waiting by the children's garden. Mirella's heart stopped. Through the window, she could see a familiar figure sitting on a bench in the small outdoor space she'd designed for the children's therapy sessions. He looked different, older somehow, more serious, but also more at peace. "Go," Carmen said, squeezing her hand. "Go talk to him." Mirella walked through the center on unsteady legs, past the cheerful chaos of healing children and caring families, toward the garden where her past was waiting to meet her future. Kellen stood when he saw her approaching. He was holding a single sunflower. Not fancy, not expensive, just simple and perfect. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, drinking each other in. He looked good, healthy and strong, but there was something in his eyes that spoke of months of pain and determination. "I heard about the foundation," she said finally. "I promised I would fix it. It took longer than I wanted, but—" He shrugged. "Sometimes the right thing takes time. Kellen, let me say this first. Please." He took a step closer. "I've spent 6 months learning how to fight for someone I love without trying to control the outcome. I've learned the difference between fixing things and supporting someone while they fix things themselves. What does that mean? It means I'm not here to rescue you or offer you my world. I'm here to ask if there's room in your world for me." Mirella felt tears threatening. "My world is complicated now. I work long hours. I'm going back to school for my doctorate. This place demands everything I have. I know. I've been watching from a distance, making sure you had everything you needed to succeed. And you have succeeded, Mirella. Look at what you've built." He gestured toward the center. "This place is saving lives every day. You've been watching?" "Not intrusively. I needed to know you were okay, that you were happy. And am I? Happy?" He studied her face carefully. "You're fulfilled. You're making a difference. You're exactly who you were meant to be." He paused. "But I don't think you're completely happy, because I don't think I am either." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've tried to go back to my old life, tried to convince myself that what we had was just a beautiful dream. But I can't, because you didn't just change how I see the world, Mirella. You changed who I am at my core." "How?" "I sold the company." Mirella stared at him in shock. "You what?" "I sold Reese Logistics, kept a small stake for income, but I'm not running it anymore." He smiled at her expression. "I realized that I built something impressive, but you built something meaningful, and I wanted to build something meaningful too. What are you going to do?" "I'm starting small, a logistics company that specializes in getting medical supplies to underserved communities. Nothing fancy, nothing that will make headlines, just something that matters." "Kellen, I know it doesn't solve everything. I know we still have obstacles to work through. But I also know that the best thing that ever happened to me was falling in love with a woman who saw past everything I thought I was and helped me become who I was supposed to be." He held out the sunflower. "So I'm asking, Mirella Dawson, if you'd like to try again, not as a billionaire and a nurse, but as two people who want to build something beautiful together." Mirella took the flower, her hands shaking. "Are you sure? Really sure? Because I can't go through losing you again. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The question is, are you willing to trust us one more time?" She looked around the garden, at the center she'd built from determination and hope, at the life she'd created from the ashes of her dreams. Then she looked at Kellen, really looked at him, and saw not the overwhelmingly powerful businessman who had once intimidated her, but the man who had bought a Toyota Camry and learned to win stuffed animals at carnival games because it made her happy. "There's something I need to tell you first," she said. "Anything. That night at the cabin, when I told you that you were my only dream." She stepped closer to him. "I meant it. And even after everything that happened, even when I was angry and hurt and afraid, you never stopped being my dream. Mirella, let me finish. You were right that night when you said I was giving up. I was scared of how much I loved you, scared of losing myself in your world, but I've learned something these past 6 months." "What?" "I learned that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding the courage to become the best version of yourself." She reached for his hands. "And the best version of me is the woman who falls asleep in your arms and wakes up ready to change the world." Kellen's smile was radiant. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes. To trying again, to building something together, to believing that love really can conquer anything if we're brave enough to fight for it." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around them, the garden bloomed with the same hope that was blossoming in their hearts. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too, and this time I'm not letting go." As they held each other in the sunlight, Surrounded by the center that represented everything Mirella had worked to achieve, both knew that their story was just beginning. They'd learned that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, but about finding someone worth fighting for. They discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. And what really mattered was standing right there in their arms. Imperfect, complicated, and absolutely perfect for them. 3 years later, Dr. Mirella Dawson-Rees would graduate with her doctorate in child psychology. 5 years later, the Dawson-Rees Foundation would open its 10th Children's Wellness Center. And 7 years later, they would welcome their first child, a daughter they would name Hope because she represented everything beautiful that could grow from the courage to believe in love. But all of that was still in the future. For now, they simply held each other in the garden they would tend together, grateful for second chances and the wisdom to recognize that the greatest love stories aren't the ones that come easily. They're the ones that teach you how to become the person you were always meant to be. The end. Have you ever had to choose between love and everything you thought you wanted? Sometimes the universe tests us not to break us, but to show us what we're truly capable of fighting for. Mirella and Kellen learned that real love isn't about perfection. It's about finding someone worth growing with, worth struggling alongside, worth becoming your best self for. What would you have done in Mirella's situation? Would you have fought for love even when it seemed to cost everything? And what do you think is the most important lesson from their story? Your participation in this channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.